The first three features of Bueno Cinema's provocateurs, Michael Haneke, are compiled under the name Glaciation Trilogy. The Seventh Continent, Benny's Video, and 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Chance introduce the slow, enigmatic, and aggressive cinematic vision that will eventually shape Haneke's filmography. Wanting his work to be a protest against the mainstream, Haneke abandons the thriller genre conventions and situates anguish in a deliberate use of silence, minimal camera movement, and very long takes. The rejection of dynamism works interestingly in films that are supposed to be thrilling. In the Glaciation Trilogy, Haneke's practical subtlety initially gives the impression that these films will progress in a peaceful fashion and be a chance for the spectators' minds to relax and wander. However, Haneke's narrative manipulations replace that tranquil atmosphere with one that confronts its spectators instead of humoring their expectations. In The Seventh Continent, we watch a family of three steadily isolate themselves from society and prepare for a collective suicide to escape the bourgeois lifestyle. Meanwhile, Benny's Video introduces the twisted aftermath of a snuff film made by an obsessive, sadistic teenager with a camera. And lastly, 71 Fragments wraps the triptych by showing titular fragments of ordinary people who will soon cross paths at a bank mass shooting. Merged with both minimalistic and naturalistic visuals, it is this trite depiction of brutality that creates a reality convincing and intriguing enough for us to consciously succumb to our voyeuristic tendencies. The trilogy's consistent use of media contributes to our confrontational voyeurism by creating evident parallels between us and its morally corrupt characters. Haneke establishes these parallels gradually by adding a new layer with each film. First, we, the spectators, are to acknowledge the entwined nature of media and our everyday lives through the Seventh Continent. The 3-year time period leading up to the family's suicide shows what it was in their routine that destroyed their will to live. It was the routine itself. Almost all of the family's possessions and mindless cycles that we had witnessed, mostly through close-ups, are eventually destroyed by the family. Books, clothes, money. Anything that bears connection to the cruel mundanity is demolished, except for the television. The news keeps on playing as the family members continue to stare at it with empty eyes, waiting for the poison to do its job. Soon enough, the dad is the only one left alive, and the moment he too starts to lose consciousness, the TV goes static. The coinciding of these last two deaths could very well suggest a bond, a codependence. The media outlives almost everyone and everything in the house, and traces an intrinsic connection to the people who habitually consumed it. Then we become included in the media we consume. In Benny's Video, the infatuation Benny has with violent media is established from the get-go, as the first thing we see is a footage of a pig being slaughtered. With camera equipment already present in his room, it becomes fairly obvious that such a morbid interest has manifested its effects through Benny's own creativity, or vice versa. The snuff film he makes where he murders a random girl from the video store is the hook that merges reality and media together. The previously recognized parallels now start to cross over. Benny consumes media, feels intrigued, decides to partake in its creation. We watch Benny consume both snippets of the media he consumes and the media he's a part of. If we weren't intrigued, we wouldn't keep on watching. As the fictitious parallels evolve and turn to crossovers, the films become meta by both including us in their layers and paralleling our own ritualistic media consumptions. The trilogy moves on from the intrinsic aspects of media consumption with 71 fragments and progresses to media's universal presence. The build-up of 71 fragments consists of a university student with severe anger issues taking out his pent-up frustration on random bystanders. Within its scattered plot that depicts the ordinary lives of people who will eventually be present in that bank, media is once again the only consistent factor. The orderly interruptions of news broadcasts don't bear any connection to the plot's context. In fact, they seem somewhat independent. News reports disrupting the flow of an already fragmented narrative makes the film focus on the bigger picture. No matter what happens in our small domes, media will continue to be present, unswayed. In the very end, the news about the mass shooter is presented during a semi-tribute of all the news that were shown throughout. This serves as a reminder that this is merely a chain of mediated content, and any horrid or traumatizing incident can somehow become a minuscule ring in its succession. Once we acknowledge our spectator position through all of the parallels and meta-nature, the Glaciation Trilogy then morphs the concept of media consumption into a specific conundrum of the modern age: violent media consumption. Even though the film's austerity and meta quality makes us resonate with the realness of what we're shown, we still let it all happen. To satisfy our own curiosity, we are technically complicit to what we see. If we are not active characters, then we are passive onlookers that accept violence if it has the potential to satisfy our own interest. So our intrusion to the characters' lives not only facilitates the cruelty seen on screen, self-inflicted or otherwise, but also feeds into the banality of violence. With the reality check we are granted, our voyeurism exceeds the typical film experience and forms into a confrontational one. The parallels we recognize become more and more prominent and eventually emphasize our own roles and contribution to violent media consumption. Ultimately, instead of identifying an antagonist, the meta-media pattern of Haneke's Glaciation Trilogy gives us a chance to evaluate our own spectator position and eventually antagonize ourselves.